Hi, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for another exciting AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. Today, we are excited to be joined by founding partner of CB1 Capital Management, Todd Harrison, to spend some time talking about where we sit in the current cannabis investment space. Of course, if you're out there and you have questions or comments, we try to make these a little bit interactive. So if you have questions, have comments, you're always welcome to put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them as we go along. We also appreciate a little hi, hello. Stevie, I see you in the audience as well. Great to see you. So you're also welcome to throw in just general comments as well. With all that said, Todd, thanks for joining. How is your short week going so far? I cannot believe I keep thinking that it's Tuesday. What's your week looking like so far?
Yeah, same. I thought it felt like Tuesday when I saw the promo.
Mm-hmm.
I got confused at first, but it was a good long weekend. Happy to be starting September. August was a good month for the space, which I'm sure we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then, where do we go from here?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Let's maybe spend some time kind of talking there. I know it has been a crazy, August, ultimately end to the summer from, a federal perspective for cannabis. So I'd love to kind of get a kind of temp check with where we are, because I know we've gotten some exciting news, seen kind of a run up, and now kind of in a waiting period again. So I'd love to hear kind of your take on the temp check.
Yeah, I think we had an offsides and then an offsides. The first offsides was when the Wall Street Journal leaked the story of the industry dinner,
Mm-hmm.
which I think was a blessing and a curse. Ultimately, it was a blessing because that collided with a sector that's been left for dead and completely vacated, right? All the institutions have left. So that's what happens when you have the potential for a game-changing catalyst meets a sector that's been in a 4+ year depression. And we had names, we saw names in the space that were up a couple 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I think the ETF was, probably almost doubled. And then you had a lot of people prognosticating that we were going to get an announcement on Labor Day weekend, which would have been news to me. We didn't think that it was going to happen. And we've seen what happens when you get excited about something like that and it doesn't come through. So the euphoria without the catalyst, or the euphoria sans catalyst, as I talked about last Thursday, was a little bit disconcerting because we haven't gotten anything tangible, and these names have run up a lot and have a lot of air underneath them if we don't get anything, as we've seen since we returned, and we haven't gotten anything. That being said, I do think, as I've said, right now, if you look at the betting sites, it has about a 1 in 3 chance of seeing rescheduling before year end on both betting sites. And I think as we were coming online, I saw a headline pass that most operators don't foresee rescheduling this year. So, listen, I get it. We've been, rug pulled so many times. We have a slightly different perspective. We think we'll see rescheduling still in the camp that it's going to be, in the near term, call it, I'd like to say September, but, I don't know. The risk, I think, of, the leak, we talked about the blessing and the curse. The blessing was that it elucidated a little bit what was going on behind the scenes. The curse is that anybody who knows anything about this administration knows how much they abhor leaks. They're not fans of anybody who does things like that. And does that delay things? That was the question. But I don't sense that they will. Without getting too deep into the weeds, we still sense that things are on track.
That's fair. I do think the Wall Street Journal article, obviously, I think was a positive sign and something interesting. But I think the more important thing that people are focusing in on was the following press conference where Trump had basically laid out a timeline, a rough timeline, ultimately not saying a specific date or anything like that, but looking in the next few weeks. What do you make of that now? Do you basically ultimately find it to be the same thing, where it is sort of that blessing and curse to give people a sense of timing? But again, obviously, I don't think anyone's expecting them to give us kind of a beat by beat on where they are in each issue. But that silence, or sort of that waiting period that we find ourselves back in. I know even when he made it, we were sort of like, okay, people might get nervous if there's, which I understand.
I think it depends on your time horizon, right? So I mean, listen, you could tell if you watch the way he responded to the question, he clearly wasn't pleased. And the first words out of his mouth were, they said there were reports. He said, yes, it was early, meaning the reports weren't supposed to be made public at that point. And um, he turned to Pam Bondi and said a couple of weeks, which I think that was the trigger for the offsides, at least, up until last Thursday. And again, they were up a lot. And when you don't get something that people are speculating, you're going to have air pockets. I think it's healthy to have the skepticism in the market. I think that's what helps to contribute to a wall of worry. I think anybody who's been around this space for any time knows that it's going to be choppy and sloppy, particularly if we don't hear anything for a couple of weeks from now, right? Like if it's what if it's next Friday? Like we don't, right? I don't think he just picked a couple of weeks out of thin air. I don't think he was bullshitting us. I don't think he was Schumering us. I don't think he was Bidening us. I think we're going to get the answer, and I still think it's going to be one that the industry will be happy with as a stepping stone toward, further change, which again, I think the president's already told us what he's comfortable with, which is Schedule 3, states' rights, clemencies, and banking.
Yep.
So would not be surprised if that's what we ultimately land with, by the end of next year.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I will say in the meantime, I know the MORE Act has kind of gotten its way back into the news cycle as well, with that being put ahead by a lot of Democrats. Would love to know, your view on that in terms of how that affects rescheduling, just because I know in Trump's comments, like you're saying specifically, he was saying, people have mixed feelings on it from a recreational perspective, but definitely from a medical perspective. So would love to hear sort of, your thoughts there.
Yeah, pull this leg and it plays Jingle Bells.
Sure.
Seriously, like, they've lost all credibility with me, the Dems. I'm not saying that the other side it has earned that credibility yet, but they have the opportunity to follow through here and to do something for the industry that I think needs to be done. I think the other side to that is very much the crackdown on the illicit market. I had a conversation last night, as it so happens, with Derek Maltz, the senior, the outgoing DEA administrator, and Weldon Angelos. So I kind of pulled them on the phone for the first time together, which was an interesting conversation to be a fly on the wall for. What's clear is that law enforcement sees the Scrooge that's this intoxicating, call it what you will, but it's really the product that's out there that has pesticides and toxic chemicals on it that's being sold by the cartels and the crime rings. That, if you recall back when Derek first was named as the acting administrator, the narrative in the marketplace was the deep state DEA. And as soon as I saw his name pass across the wire, I called Charlie and Sully. I'm like, Ixnay on the deep state DEA. I said, well, let's pivot to the enemy of my enemy is my friend, because they designating cartels as terrorists, and we don't necessarily want to be taking out somebody who's taking on terrorists. Plus the fact that they're right. Like the cartels and the crime rings have been bastardizing the hemp loophole and using a lot of this ambiguity between state and federal law to their advantage. And the only way, as I said to Derek, and he says, you're 100%. Oh, he sees our point of view and he understands it. Whereas I think at one point he didn't. That if you don't have a legal alternative and a safe alternative, then you have no other choice than to go to the dirty weed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think we've also seen a lot of, sort of like you're saying, kind of crackdowns on illicit grows or illegal grows or things like that. I don't know if that's more coverage that we've been seeing lately, or that is just sort of in line with the greater level of enforcement that we've been seeing from the administration. Do you make of that anything, or do you think that's just sort of, again, trying to put in place sort of their wider policy of kind of enforcement and
I think it ties together. I remember when Derek first got appointed, I caught a lot of shit on social media because they say it's not about cannabis, it's about the cartels.
Mhm.
And that when he stepped down, he called me and he said, "Thank me." He wasn't going to talk to me while he was still in the office. He said, "You're 100% right. That's exactly what it's about. We're here for, they're poisoning our kids." I mean, I've known Derek and his family for over a dozen years. I mean, he's an American hero. He caught El Chapo, like not somebody you want to pick a fight with, right? I don't think it's mutually exclusive at all. I think it's very much coordinated that you want to take away the bad product, you want to provide a safe alternative. And I think those things fit well together because you can't do one without the other.
Yep. No, I think that totally makes sense. Also ties in exactly, I think, to Brandon's comment of it is hard to kind of put the genie back in the bottle or the toothpaste back in the tube. It is out there. So providing people better, paths and ultimately alternatives, I think is the key thing. Um, Anything else that sort of you think is on sort of the current landscape that is putting pressure? I know there's been a lot of focus on obviously the federal side of things because that is where the most focus is because we've had that kind of timeline laid out, even if it's a rough timeline. But I know on the state side, there's also been kind of, growing pressure. I know there's been a lot of budgets that require more tax dollars, and that's been kind of a push. Anything on the state side that has been kind of drawing your attention, focus, or is it really just all
I
things
mean,
federal right
I mean, this is really, it's a good question because it's not mutually exclusive to the conversation we were just having about rescheduling, because I feel like if we get that decision, when we get that decision, if we get the decision,
now? Or if, when, and how?
get that decision, I think it does. The halo effect is going to be pretty pervasive, whether it's at the state level, at the legislative level, especially if Trump says he wants banking and you have a red, hill. And let's not forget, you also have a conservative court with a number of rulings, whether it's on the guns or whether it's Jason Verano and those guys with the canon provisions. You have a couple of things that are going on, so you have all three branches of government. But I think Schedule 3 is sort of what will thaw a lot of those processes, right? Whether it's Pennsylvania or it's Virginia or it's the VA, right? Like that, like how can you have, give veterans cannabis as medicine and say it has no medical value, right? Like, so, we're coming to a head, trying to, where you stand is a function of where you sit, right? Traders are going to trade, investors are going to invest. You have people who do both. The volatility is there. When they go up, nobody owns enough. When they go down, everybody owns too much. It's just, find your, your sweet
Comfort.
spot and understand why you're here. And, like I said, it's going to come down to the big man. He delivers. The industry lives to fight another day. He pulls a Biden, and, it's going to be a sloppy year end. But, we're still of the view that he's going to come through.
That's fair. So even in the time that I think he has expressed support for rescheduling, and it sounds like that's on the table and potentially again upcoming at some point. Again, hard to pin down that exact time frame, but a few weeks. We'll see what that actually means. It feels like it could be someone saying, "I'll be there in 5 minutes," and it's really 10, 15. You never know, but they're still coming. Um, you know. Oh wait, shoot. I was going to ask about. I just totally lost my train of thought because I was thinking about how I often do that, and I should not do that. Um, I was gonna ask, dang it. Totally lost my train of thought. That is all good. All right, let me think about what I was gonna ask. Um, that is tough sometimes, and honestly, can't even blame cannabis in this one. Yes,
Just,
I'll stop
just
thinking.
tell me what's on your mind.
I've got so much on my mind. There's so much going on all the time. I feel like, whatever.
Tell me about your childhood.
Uh, we can open up. I am trying to that was a good question too that I legitimately wanted the answer, like your view on.
We're talking about the halo effect of a potential rescheduling. We're talking about the Veterans Affairs bill. We're talking about Senate. We didn't talk about the shutdown, potential shutdown.
We
We
can
didn't
talk
talk
about that.
about,
We
something like that. Getting
we can
in.
We can talk about that. I was gonna ask, well, I guess for now, I did wanna just check in on I feel like there has been a conversation around, descheduling, kind of mucking things up and slowing things down. Do you see that being a problem at all? Eh,
I,
re
I
and
mean, I don't, because I think I mean, with the exception of a handful of people, maybe most of the people who are on the deschedule or bust train have come to understand that the only way we're going to do this is incrementally, which is something that some of us have been saying for 5 years,
Sure.
right? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that's cost us big, right? It's cost us everything from safe banking when there were zero interest rates to, to everything in between, all the legislation and all the, the pandering that we've been subjected to over the last number of years politically. But here we are, right? So looking forward, not back. Like, what does this mean? We need new investors in the space. We need new liquidity in the space. We need more than just day traders and more than just one big PM that decides what to buy, right? We need custody. We need Schedule 3 to soften the regulatory landscape, because remember, custody and exchange listing, there's no laws there. That's a compliance issue.
Yep.
Right. So, if you get a comment from the president says that this is what he wants, does that give you the political cover?
I also did remember my question. Also, thanks, my diabetic journey. Not alone. I appreciate it. It is tough. I've only had 1 Celsius today. So my question was sort of, I know we're waiting. You're saying, obviously, it's when the big man makes the decision. But in the meantime, I know the industry has been communicating with him. I know there have been advocates like Weldon who have been communicating and trying to push this forward. Have they not taken their foot off the gas, but are they still trying to, drive the issue forward, show how important it is from the timing perspective? What's sort of going on there, as even though he's already said, hey, we're working on this, and
I mean, I think it's safe to say that nobody's taken any foot off of the gas. I think the self-inflicted wounds by the industry have been, notable.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, if you have a dinner and you're told not to talk about it, why would you talk about it? Right. It almost seems like you're asking for trouble. So, if we can control the self-inflicted wounds, it was funny before the.
Is that a landline? I don't think I've heard that type of ringtone in about 1,000 years.
No, it is. It is. It was. It's back from my Jack Bauer 24 days. But nobody's taking their foot off the gas. I think, if anything, the league gave the prohibitionists a line of sight to get in the president's ear, try to talk them out of it, and if not, then to prepare for the litigation that we're surely going to see, almost before the thing finishes crossing the wire, right? We'll see litigation. But that being said, I think it was Shane Pennington, who knows, way more about this than I do, says he puts that at about a 10% shot. This has been, this process has been ongoing for some time now.
Yeah.
So, I think, what I'm trying to get to personally is a place where you can look at prices as an opportunity rather than a hindrance. And, if they're going up and you're like, God, I wish I owned more of that. You can't be upset when that, is down, right? And it gives you the opportunity to buy more, right? You can't have it both ways. So, what we're operating here, and not saying it's right, but we have trades and we have investments. We think some of the wings, right? You have the guts and the wings, the guts being maybe the better quality companies, the FANG type names. And then the wings are some of those guys that, have been just discarded, depending on, the company, right? There are names that are fundamentally sound names that we want to own, and rotate into on pullbacks. They may not appreciate as much on a headline as some of the wings, we'll call it, but if you just using the analogy, if you're buying the wings, as trades and you're owning the guts as investments, then as these things go up, you sell the wings, and then they come in, you buy the guts, and you rinse and repeat. But we're going to need a headline to kind of get this thing going, to fill that gap. There's a pretty big election gap that we tried to fill and failed to fill, and it was almost like you got suckered into believing that it, once it started to fill, it was going to fill, and then you had a lot of the hopium crowd come into the weekend, and even before there were the prognostications, it was like it just felt there was too much high-fiving, like this. We've had a rough 5 years, right? To have one good month and then to have a circle smirk, it doesn't pass the smell test, right? The road to redemption is long. So, and if you're here and you believe that change, historic change is afoot, and it's, weeks, not months,
Or years.
then you're here and that's your hand, right? And if you don't think that that's going to happen, then you have a different agenda.
Or view.
But, to each their own.
Yeah, exactly right. Also, yes, speaking of that, brain dead, no worries. I feel like, again, whatever you're comfortable with, you also don't have to, obviously that is all good. Also, yes, your sound effects / all your different alerts definitely sound like an arcade sometimes, which is solid. All right, interesting question, which I think has exited the conversation, but would love to hear your opinion. The question is, the rescheduling to Schedule 2, is that FUD still floating around?
I don't think so. I think that was a conversation at a point, but I don't think that's still a conversation.
Yeah. I would imagine after, again, anything could happen. I don't know, but I would imagine after Trump's direct comments saying for medical use, I would infer that would be Schedule 3, but I don't hear that as much. It may be for some people.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you, and I think I wrote this yesterday. If I wasn't, and I've been helping Weldon, I think 4+ years, and this was through, Trump pardoned him, and who knew, at that time that it would come full circle. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if I wasn't, privy to the conversations and privy to the engagement and saw, saw this sausage being made, I guess, for lack of a better word, and obviously everything can change, right? Like it has before. I remember the Silicon Valley Bank, right? That whole thing with the crypto blow up. Like Safe had a stealth path. Like even I think Natalie Fertig said, "Oh, I didn't even know this." Like we knew, like we were like there was a path there, and then of course, there was a banking crisis. So like things happen, right? Like a lot of things happening in the world right now. Not to mention a very fragile macro landscape and rates. There's a lot going on. So a lot can change, but suffice to say that, as of last night, as of when I woke up this morning, the only thing that's changed since last week is price. And, for a lot of these names are back to where they were last week, earlier in the week. And I just think looser grips, right? I mean, something goes up, if anything goes up 200-300% in a month, like if it pulls back by a third, is it healthy or is it, unhealthy? I would argue it's unhealthier if it just keeps going. So you have to just think your time horizon with your risk profile. We believe the president's going to come through. If he doesn't, then shame on me again for believing politicians. But this is not. I don't think he's going to pull a Biden. I don't think he's going to pull a Schumer. I think he's going to come through with what he said, and then from there, we move on to the next phase, which is the legislation, and you have the litigation, and then you have the hemp stuff, and you have the state stuff, and it's always something. So we'll figure it out.
That's true. I know we were joking earlier. I think clearing the craziest hurdle of all the rumors of Trump not being around over the weekend, but him showing up.
I didn't even know that was a
really?
thing. I would try to stay off Twitter on the weekend.
That's probably healthy, but yeah, a lot of rumors. That would have been a crazy thing. I don't know what would have happened then. Ultimately, I do think the trend still points towards cannabis at some point, but yeah, that definitely would have been quite the gum in the works, but obviously did not happen. So also, yes, I definitely agree that to me, I don't think Schedule 2 is as much in play for all the reasons that Todd said, but yeah, I think that is true as well. All right, well then I think we're still in the waiting game. What is helping you kind of work through, like find patience, find sort of that level-headedness? Because you've been through, again, a long time in the cannabis space. You've seen when things are sort of ebullient, when things are kind of calmer, you've seen when there's quiet, how people and sentiment can change. How are you kind of keeping a level head through?
I mean, I'm still trying to get outside while the weather's nice, and when I can take calls during walks. It was easier during the summer. Things have started to pick up. Like today is wall to wall from early to late. Not complaining, but that's one way. Certainly, is just getting outside, doing some hiking with
Yeah.
the pups. My wife and I took the pups to the preserve, I should say, this past weekend. And, and the kids, we talked before the show, or my little one, first day of high school today. The twins are seniors in college. And life goes on. Before we know it, we'll be where we've always wanted to be, and the journey will be over, and we'll say, you know, that's it. That was easy.
Yeah, exactly right. That can be the title of your book. That was easy. It would be a great one. Yeah, not so much. But yeah, what a journey. Again, hopefully being on the other side of it, it will be, I think, a lot easier to stomach the, years of volatility. It has been a crazy ride. I think a lot of great companies doing some great things in the space. Some obviously have struggled because it has been such a tough environment, but it'll be interesting to see how kind of the landscape changes on the other side of rescheduling and beyond, honestly, because I know people have talked about it in the past. Rescheduling doesn't do, of course, everything, but a huge domino, I think, to kind of push things in that direction. So we'll have to wait and see. Of course, Pete, no worries. I think we do these again. I think it's a great way to kind of connect, share some insight, and give some perspective. Yes, outside is great. All right. Well, then, I mean, I feel like that's it. It's sort of, we're still in a waiting position. I think, a lot of stuff out there, still keeping an eye on the state stuff, but obviously federal has the majority of sort of mind share for people, I think, right now. But any final thoughts? I think that's pretty much it for now.
I think so. Hopefully, I'll see you in a couple of weeks, and I'm hopeful we're not going to have the same conversation
Yeah.
because it feels like we'll probably see a softness at the beginning of the week, and then hopium into the end of the week, and rinse and repeat until we actually get a decision. So
Yes.
we'll see.
Fingers
But
crossed. Well,
today's Wednesday, so that probably bodes well going
it's
into the weekend. But we'll
that's
see.
true. Well, we'll be doing our part. We'll be in Huntington Beach in California for Future Proof soon. So we'll be talking with a lot of people, a lot of advisors, kind of sharing the story about cannabis and kind of where we've been and what's potentially ahead. So again, we're constantly working on our end to try to
Tell Joshi and Barry I send my love,
let
please.
them know. I'll let them know. That sounds great. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Todd. Really appreciate the time. I know you have a busy day, so appreciate you making the time. Everyone out there, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Love the questions, comments. They're always really great. So really appreciate you tuning in. Hope you see us tomorrow, and we will catch you then. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.